10% of the things I wanted. Not that I thought that I'll be able to do everything in 2-3 hours, but I only...
Yosef, you got a big problem there. I'll tell you what your problem is.
What?
The problem is, if these disciples of Jesus, the ones who wrote the New Testament, and granted they didn't graduate from any yeshivas, and they were unlearned, but if they were so laughable, how is it that Christianity took off? How is it that even many of the Pharisees followed what these foolish people were teaching, unless they were convinced that something miraculous, unless they were convinced that the hand of God was involved?
Very good. I'm glad you said it. And from your words, I'm going to prove to you that Judaism is the only valid religion. From what you just said. When I come to a crowd and I try to convince them to be my students, and I start to gathering all the homeless people of the street, as he did, as you know, those ignorant that do not know anything anyway, and gather them to be students and have himself a cult. When I come, and this is my goal, what kind of religion I'll design to these people? An easy religion to practice that everybody will jump and say, hey, we're with you, 100%, everything is allowed. Or I will design a religion that is so complicated, so difficult to keep. What will be an easier job for me? To come and tell them, for instance, one of the times his student told him, you told us that we're not allowed to violate any rules of the Torah. So how come you eat bread without washing your hands, without netilat yadayim? They asked him, those ignorant challenged him. So he started to curse the rabbis. But in another page, as I mentioned before, he told his students, make sure you follow the instructions of the servants of Moshe, the sages, because they have it from generation to generation. So now, you just say that you must listen to the rabbis. Those are the ones who keep the Torah of Moses alive. And when the student asks you why you yourself don't listen to them, he started to curse them. Or when he told them that they're not allowed to violate the rules of the Sabbath, the next day student came and they wanted to cut wheat on the Sabbath. And he started to see that they're getting angry at him. So he told them, I allow you today to cut weeds. Why? I am the master of the Sabbath. Come on. You just say in the book of Matthew, as I mentioned before, no one is allowed to contradict one little law. And if he does, he is going to be cursed by God.
I'm sure they're...
just allow them to violate one of the most important rules of God.
See, I'm sure they would like to hear my explanation.
Please?
I'm sure they would.
You're cutting me in a nice way, I surrender.
I'll always try to be nice.
No problem.
What Jesus did, he never said you don't have to follow the law or the law is not important. And that's why Yosef is correct. He told the people to follow those in leadership. He did nothing. He wasn't a revolutionary. He did nothing to try to undermine the authority. But what he did do was point out that their interpretation of the law wasn't an accurate interpretation. You see, the religious leaders would criticize Jesus for healing on the Sabbath. And Jesus pointed out that they were hypocrites. Why? Because they did many things themselves on the Sabbath. They would water their animals. They would assist with the births of their animals. The priests would minister on the Sabbath. And so he understood correctly, and the religious Jews of the day should also have been able to understand that there are certain commandments that are more important than others. That it is justified if somebody is starving to death to pick food on the Sabbath day.
Wait, please. I used an example that is the worst sin in Judaism. Cutting weeds on the Sabbath is one of the 39 laws that we're not allowed to do on the Sabbath. You want the proof? I'll give you the proof.
Okay, let's see it.
I give you the proof. Comes a person named Slofchad. You read in the Old Testament, Slofchad. he went on the first Sabbath after accepting the Torah, and he started to pull weeds, cash from the ground, and Moses didn't know what to do with him. He took him and put him in jail. He asked God, this is what he did. What should I do with him? God came and told him, execute him in front of the entire nation, leman iru v'irau, that a person like this have no right to live. And Jesus, as I mentioned before, and you agree with me, I'm not bringing sources that are not exist, and it says he allowed his student to do what Slofcha did. Now you just said no one is allowed to contradict the Torah, and you allow them to do something that the Torah say that it's death penalty. And when they told you, how are you allowing us such a thing? You say, I am the master of the Sabbath. You have to make up your mind. If you're the master of the Sabbath, that means God does not exist. You are a new God. The Torah is not true. If you come and say the Torah is the word of God, be very careful not to modify it, and you come and start changing it according to your need every day, then not only you're not the Messiah, you're not even a student.
Are you allowed to defend yourself on the Sabbath? Are you allowed to minister in the temple on the Sabbath?
Not to the point.
But what is the point on it?
The point is, can I come to one of my students that's sitting here, and he tell me, please, I'm going to lose $1 million if I'm not going to cut my weeds tomorrow, because on Sunday there's a huge storm. I want to take my workers only tomorrow, Rabbi, I'm begging you. Please let me cut my weeds because I'm going to lose $5 million. Whatever the case is. Do you know in history, before Jesus, after Jesus, any rabbi that kept what Jesus suggested, not to move an inch from the Torah, that will have the guts to come and tell a student you're allowed to cut the weeds on the Sabbath? It's such a violation.
But wouldn't you admit that there are exceptions?
Yes, exceptions.
Wouldn't you admit that there are some more important?
Pikuach nefesh, only life risk. There is only one exception to the law. If a person is in a life threat, such as pregnant woman, she may get into problems, complications, or a person needs a hospital, we are the Jews driving on a Sabbath, or if we need to light fire to save the life of a Jew, even if we're not sure he has high fever, just there's a 1% chance that a person is going to die, comes the Torah and say, the laws were given for us to live, thanks to them, not to die.
How about circumcising a child on the 8th day and violating the Sabbath? Okay. Which comes first?
Comes the Torah in a clear sentence and told us that we are allowed to do it on the 7th day. And if you know, in the chapter 19 of the Talmud, the Mishnah, Perek 19, the Rabbi Eliezer, asking this question, and has about 2 pages with proofs and verses from the Torah. How do we know that we're allowed to circumcise the baby in the 8 days? And you asked before about the oral laws, and maybe that's the time for me to respond to your question. You have to use common sense, which is very simple. What's the common sense? God brings the Jews in front of Mount Sinai and gives them the written Torah. The written Torah say Torahs. You disagree with me, but we'll take it further. Now tell me, if God comes to millions of people, remember they're 1300 years before Christianity, so there's no argument yet. The argument will start 1300 years later, but at this point everybody see that event. Comes God and say to the Jews, here is the Torah I'm giving you, and the Jews listening to Moses speaking. How do we know? Nobody would be interested to take such a difficult religion to keep. So many laws, changing their lifestyle completely, unless if what the Torah says is the truth. So when I read about myself that God spoke to Moses, I'm a witness. If it's not true, I will say, Mr. Moshe, there's a mistake in the book.
May I?
Wait.
That's a good point. It's a good point. It's a very good point.
I will give you the time, but give me another minute. Comes the Torah to Moshe and say, come one Jew and say to the crowd, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, anybody heard here God speaking to Moses and giving him authority to be the leader? Please raise his hand. We are not interested to get it. We are free people. We want to do whatever we want. Like today, people don't want to be religious. What made millions of people all of a sudden became 100% strict and follow the rules? The fact that they heard God. Now, you may come and say, well, how do we know about the oral laws? Very simple. if you search in the entire written Torah, there are 613 laws. Not in one place the Torah gave instructions, the written Torah, the Torah never gave instructions for people how to follow this mitzvah, this commandment.
Which one?
All of them. The 613 laws that describe in the Torah, without the oral laws, there is no way to understand one law. Such, I'll give you an example. The Torah say you have to circumcise a male born on the 8th day. You should cut the orla. We know what we cut when we circumcise a baby. Now, if we wouldn't have the oral laws, right when Moses bring down the Torah, people will say, what you brought us, Chinese book? Okay, God say we should not cut the orla. What's orla? Mordechai would say, orla it's this. He would say, orla it's this. She would say, orla it's the nails. He will say, Moses, what's orla? There's no oral Torah according to your opinion. What's orla? Where we have to cut? God said that if we don't cut it, we're not Jews. We want to be Jews. But God didn't tell us where to cut. Is it possible? I'm losing my eternity if I'm not circumcise my children, and God will not tell me even Aleph Bet how to do it, how to cut, what happened when the baby is sick. One question. Second, the Sabbath. The Sabbath. I gotta keep the laws of the Sabbath. I don't know if you know, but there are
may I interject?
There are thousands of laws.
They hear you every week. Maybe I can say something.
No, I'm answering what you ask about the oral laws. You ask me a question, I'm answering.
We need new rules. That's what we need.
Okay, so you say it like this. You say the oral
We need an oral law for our discussion here.
I'm asking, you ask me a question, I'm answering you. And the point is like this. God say you have to observe the Sabbath, and a person that does not observe the Sabbath, exclude himself from Judaism. Why? It's the covenant that we made with God. It's applied to Jews, by the way, also. Not only to non-Jews. But a Jew that refuses to keep the law of the Sabbath, he puts himself in violation. And he is not able to do certain Jewish holy ceremony. Why? Because it's the covenant that God made with the Jewish nation for eternity. That's the word of the Torah. Now, where does it say in the written Torah, from the thousands of laws that we keep, most of us here, where does it say it? Comes the Torah in 12 different places and say that a Jew does not keep the law of the Sabbath, he will be stoned to death, and his soul will cut for eternity. Tell me please, in the entire written Torah, God comes and gives me an order. You should keep the Sabbath. You should not do any work in Sabbath. Comes a Jew that just accepted the book and says, okay, God, I'm willing to listen to you. Where are the instructions? There's nowhere in the world where it's a one detail about the Sabbath. Same thing to Tefillin, the same thing, each one of the laws. Comes the Torah and separate between the written laws and the oral laws. And you know why? The non-Jews will not have it.
Okay.
Because if the non-Jews will have it in their hand today, nobody in the world will know if he is an original descendant of the Jewish nation. Why? Everybody wanted to be a son of God in that generation, because the Goyim, the non-Jews, they wanted to be religious as they are today. They want to join the nation of God, who everybody admit that got the Torah from Mount Sinai. Everybody, the Goyim, admit it. And they translated it to 70 languages, which show interest. So what do we have to do?
Yosef,
if everything will be in the book, we will become Jews in 2
You're
minutes.
somebody who cares a lot about evidence, and yes. I respect that. And you say that there must be an oral law, because if there was no oral law, we wouldn't know how to circumcise.
Not even a simple law.
Okay,
We would not know.
Abraham was somehow able to circumcise, and he didn't have any oral law. The oral law, according to you, didn't come until Moses. How was it that Abraham was able to be a Jew and live before God and not have the oral law? Maybe there are other ways that they were able to follow the law without some mythical oral law for which you have no evidence.
I have news for you. There is a sentence in the Torah that says that I loved Abraham because he kept my Torahs, again, plural, written and the oral, and the laws and everything. Ekev asher shamar Avraham et torotai, mitzvotai vechukotai. Avraham kept all my laws. Comes the oral Torah and ask your question. The oral Torah say how...
Just prove my point.
No, the opposite.
I'll tell you how you prove my point. When you said that Abraham kept my Torahs, that proves the point that Torahs are instructions or laws and not two separate bodies, because according to Jewish tradition, there was no oral law until Moses.
Who gave Abraham all the instructions, what to do and how to do, before the Torah was published? And I want to get your attention to one thing that the Torah says, that before the world was created, 974 generations before the Torah was ready, before the physical world was created. And before everything here started, the divine Torah was already existed. Now, if you know about Noah after the flood...
I need some evidence on that.
Okay, no problem. If Noah, after the flood, when he came out of the ark, how did he know how to tell the difference between pure animals and not pure animals? The oral Torah answer, because God gave the main people from the time of Adam. Every person that the Torah highlight had all the laws of the Torah for him and all his followers, until it was published in front of millions of people. And by the way, you should know that even the Sabbath was given a little bit before Mount Sinai. And now, you have to also remember one thing. If a person wanted to keep the laws of the written Torah, every Jew will do it completely different than the other. Now, you know that the Jews were living in exile for more than 2,000 years, until about 60 years ago they started to gather in Israel. You also know there were no internet, no telephones, no communication, and the Jews were spread all over the world with no communication. Now, you also know that when the Yemenites, for instance, way before the destruction of the temple, they went to Yemen. And the Jews were spread all over the world, and they gathered to Israel, as I said, just before Israel became a state. Each one of them brought with him, with his family, thousands of oral laws that did not change a bit. Circumcision in Yemen was the same one in Poland. And the same thing the Torah. The Jewish Torah have 304,805 letters, much longer than the New Testament, much longer than the Quran. If you go to every synagogue in the world, you tell the rabbi to open the Torah. The Torah is the same Torah. Everywhere you go, you see the same Torah. However, when you want to open up Quran in Kuwait and Quran in Saudi Arabia and Quran in Israel, it's not the same Quran. There are many differences. Same thing the New Testament, as I mentioned to you before. 150,000 differences on the text. Very simple.
I'm confused about that. What are you referring to when you say 150,000 different...
I'll explain. If I brought the original book now, and there we have, Baruch Hashem, a lot of people here, and each one of them had to take a feather and copy even only 100,000 letters. That's all. Each one has to copy. Now remember, there's no printing machine. So I have to see it from morning to night and write a page, 2 pages. It takes between 1 to 2 years to write a Sefer Torah. So now, if a person does it, what are the chances that a person will write manually 100,000 letters? Remember, the Torah is triple than that, 300,405 letters. But I want to just ask you as an intelligent question. A person write 100,000 letters. Is it possible that he will make 100, 300, 500 mistakes, 0.1%? You know what? Let's go to the minimum. 1 letter out of 100,000, it's very normal that a person made a mistake, especially in the Hebrew letters. Why? The Hebrew letters are very similar. The Yud and the Vav, it's exactly the same. The difference is 1 little dot. If the ink spread by a bit, the letter change. So now, when the people copy it manually, and time when there is no electric, and they did everything manually, the battery died. Okay, so that gives me more permission to talk now. See?
We don't want to give you any more permission. You do very well without extra permission.
Thank you very much for the compliment. but Reuven, you were doing it too fast. I'll take care of you later. But the point was that a person make at least one mistake. He make one mistake in the letter Dalet. He made one mistake in the letter Resh. He made one mistake in the letter Lamed. He make one mistake in the letter Hey. He made it Chet. It's very similar letters. Now, between him and him, there's already 4 differences. And now, when everybody copied from the original text with only one letter mistake, now we have, I don't know, 100, 200 people. There's already 200 different texts. Multiply by 2,000 years. What do you get? Okay.
Talking about now, finally, when you were talking about 150,000 verses, I couldn't figure out what you were talking about. Okay, what Yosef is talking about is that there are 150,000 variants. When you look at textual variants, you see there are over 5,500 ancient Greek manuscripts, and what textual critics have done is to record every variation among these 5,500 texts. And so if you add up all those variations from all those different texts, you come up with something like 150,000. Yosef is correct. But let me just point out, if you divide it by 5,500 to get an idea of the average number of variants per text, you're not talking about that many. And when you recognize you're just talking about a letter, one letter out of a word, what you come down with, even though you might have those variants, is you come down with a text where there's really no question about the text, because we're just talking about little spelling mistakes for the most part.
Spelling that change the meaning of the words in many places.
But you see, if we have 5,500,
but it's
if we have 5,500,
the book is not divine anymore.
Even if, well, we don't claim that the copies that were made of the originals are divine, but we do claim that originally, the same way with Tanakh, that originally it was all inspired by God. It was all without error. That's the same thing that we claim. And I would agree with you about those number of errors. But if you're talking about the many different words, and I can't tell you how many different words there are in the New Testament, and you're looking at all those different letters, you're really not talking about a whole lot at all when you're talking about 5,500 texts. In fact, the vast majority of textual critics acknowledge that even with these variations, it doesn't change the meaning of the text in any palpable way.
Not according to my sources. According to my sources, and I check the sources in Christian sources. Christians wrote, criticals of the New Testament, not Jews. Because if I will bring you from the rabbis, you say, oh, the rabbis wrote what's good for them. And if you want, I will supply you with those sources. Those 150,000 spelling mistakes, as you call them, change in many places names and dates and complete things from the actual story. Now, if we have one diamond that's worth $100 million, and it's 5-carat, 10-carat diamond, and that's an original one. Each one of the people here took out of his pocket one diamond and threw it at me, and my original diamond fell and got mixed with all of them. And they're all an exact copy of the original one, but they're all Russian fake diamonds. It's very hard to tell the difference, if you know what I mean. Even experts sometimes cannot get fooled by it. Now, it's a fact that one of them is an original diamond. It's worth fortune. Since it got mixed with 150,000 diamonds, even if one of them was really given by God, it's worthless because it got lost. Go find it now. So that's what I'm trying to... Wait. But you're not letting me finish. I'm just about to finish. You cut me. One more sentence. The point is like this. If a book is divine, just that you know, in Torah, if you take a Sefer Torah, when you take it out, everyone rise. If it falls on the floor, people are fasting. We give a lot of respect. It's the book of God. And I'm sure you would rise also as respect to God as giving the Old Testament. But if one letter is missing, it lost all its holiness. If I take a Torah from here and put it in a suitcase and send it with El Al to Israel, believe me, you lost all your friends. Threw the Torah, they threw it in the luggage. But if I had missing letters in it, it lost its value. Why? If it's divine, it must be perfect. If it's 99.9, it's not divine. It's human. Find me the original New Testament. Can you point to that?
None of us have the original manuscript. We don't have the original Mosaic manuscript.
Sure we do.
No, we don't.
Sure we do.
The oldest text that we have are the Dead Sea Scrolls. We do not have anything older than the
Incorrect. Not true. Incorrect.
Well, I can point out a lot of rabbinic scholars who would challenge you on that, and not only challenge you, but they would also say Moses didn't even exist, let alone write it. Now that doesn't mean, now of course I don't go along with that, but just because you can come up with critics, and Yosef mentioned New Testament critics who take issue with the New Testament, you can find Old Testament critics who take issue with the Old Testament and where it came from.
Right. Now, if a person will walk into the room and give you this book, and you hold the book, and he just told you, I received it from God, and you say, how do I know it's from God? He tells, I'll give you a week to test. If you find one mistake in this book, then you know God doesn't make mistakes. So you ask him, what kind of mistakes you're talking about? I mean, he asks you, what kind of mistakes? Say, geographical mistake, mathematical mistake, dates, contradictions. So you may say, okay, give me a week. I'll check it carefully. You open it in the first page, and you find the Twin Towers collapsed in Brooklyn. You have beautiful stories. God just gave him the book, he claimed. And you see, the Twin Towers just collapsed. They give you a date. Maybe the date is correct, whatever. It's irrelevant right now. It collapsed in Brooklyn. You as an intelligent person, and I'm sure you are, I saw it. So I want to ask you a question, but give me an honest answer. Would you waste another second, continue to review the rest of the book, or you feel it's a waste of time? He just told you it's from God. And inside it said the Twin Towers collapsed in Brooklyn. Please answer this. Would you waste a minute after that, or you go to more valuable things to do? Shh.
You want my answer?
An honest answer, please.
And you won't cut me off.
No, I'm waiting.
If I found, I have to admit, if I found in the New Testament that there were contradictions that couldn't be explained, say, from copyist errors or something of that matter, it would seriously undermine my belief in the New Testament. But let me just add this, that I acknowledge, huh? You were afraid I would add something.
No, in America there's always a but.
But things are nuanced. You need buts. That's why they put that in the language. Buts are important.
Take the time for your but. Kadima, let's go.
But what if I find such incredible wisdom in the New Testament? What if through a relationship with Christ, I find that through this relationship and through His wisdom, I'm miraculously changed? What if? Wait, let me. You said you wouldn't. Wait a second. You said you wouldn't interrupt me. Let me finish. I've been.
This person, he doesn't know. I mean, we're talking somebody right now came from the street. Please.
Must I follow your rules exactly? Do I have not a little bit of room to answer it the way that I can?
Give you permission to follow.
You see, one reason, and I appreciate the fact that Yosef talks about evidence. Thank you. And reasons to believe. I really appreciate the fact that he wants to base his faith on solid ground. I do too. And there are many reasons that I believe in the New Testament. One reason I believe in the New Testament is a personal reason. The reason I came to Christ is that Christ changed my life. I was a crazy, mixed-up kid. I saw 5 PhD psychologists or psychiatrists, and they were all highly recommended, and each one of them left me worse off than I was before. I have been following Christ now for 31 years, and it's only been getting better. And the more I study the Word, and also the Old Testament too, the more I study that, the more I see such wonders in wisdom and understanding. Wisdom that can only come from a divine source.
You know that the...
Does somebody have questions? Because you're probably getting bored just listening to the two of us.
Bored? Anybody here is bored? No. Wait. You know that what you just said, it's not a scientific proof, because Muslims can swear that Quran makes their life so much better, and Hindus and all other cults. So that's really not an indication that shows that religion is true. But going back to my question that I asked you, thank you for your honest answer. So obviously a normal human being with common sense, not a genius, a normal human being, they don't have to be extra smart. If a person will claim that this book is from God, and I opened it and I saw in one page that the Twin Towers collapsed in Brooklyn, I tell him, my friend, I gave you your chance, you lost it. You blew it. Thank you very much, I'm a busy person. Fair? I gave him the chance. I took a week, I reviewed the book. I got lucky. After an hour, I found that mistake. Please explain me.
One question. Not a whole. I am limited in papers.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Ask me one question.
All right. Go ahead. No. Please. Me or you? Me.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. I mean. Yeah. Please explain me. How does it say in the New Testament that the cave of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is in the city of Nablus, when every person in the world that knows a little bit Israel and knew Israel for the past generations know that the cave of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is in the city of Hebron? How can it be such mistake in a divine book? God, yes, here you go.
Where is it?
It says like this.
In the New Testament, where is it at? So I can find it.
It says here, it says Jacob was very...
Where in the New Testament, though?
I don't have, in this particular time, I don't have the...
Go on to your next question, then, because I can't answer a question where I can't find the reference.
No, in most of the places that I quote him, I wrote the sources. And this particular one, I don't have the source, but I will prove you that it exists. I mean, we read it. Okay. Also, well, now it's too late to get it, but I'll get it to you, maybe even today. We'll see. But no, well, maybe I'll email it to you. Okay. All right. But let's agree one thing. If I'm gonna prove to you that the New Testament says that the cave where Jacob was buried, even though the Torah says that it's in Hebron, it's in the city of Nablus, is the argument over, or you continue to come up with new opinions and new arguments based on what you said before?
I complimented you before, Yosef, because you were asking substantive questions.
Yes.
What this question is not as rich and as substantive as some of the others that you were asking. I really don't know what to say about that, and until you find a reference from me, I really don't know how to answer you.
Okay, but I'm repeating my question. If I will find you the source and show you where it is, I have it in my house. It's just a matter of an hour. You'll have it in an email when I get home. When I get you the source and show you...
Do you have the New Testament?
Sure.
We'll find the source.
Well, maybe I have a help here from a good friend of mine sitting somewhere here. He will help us to find the source. I told you before we started, and I am sure you believe me, that before I say something, I check myself at least 5 times. You have to check yourself twice, but I check myself at least 5 times. So it's only a matter... Shh, no, please, concentrate on what we have here. This is the stage right here. So please, if I'm repeating my question to you, because it's a matter of moments or matter of hours. If I show you that the New Testament, which you claim God gave it, and have such a geographical mistake that it's obviously impossible that God doesn't know where the New Testament, when the cave is this the end of the argument, or we're going to have to continue to prove? That's my question to you.
At first I said I wasn't going to ask you, but you make such a persuasive case for an answer. I will try to answer. Now, it's probably not going to be the type of answer you like, but I don't know if I can satisfy you on this. But the reason that we believe in something, or we don't believe in something, it usually doesn't hinge on a simple little word or a simple little fact. If I find so many reasons to believe in the New Testament, if I believe in the miracles, if I believe, and I think a much more meaningful thing to pursue would be the prophecies of Jesus, about the many prophecies that show that Jesus would actually, or the Messiah would die for the sins of the people. In Isaiah 53, talks about, all we like sheep have gone astray, but God laid upon him the sins of us all. And it talks about him being a burnt offering. There are many such prophecies. In fact, in Zechariah, now this has good news and this is bad news, because in Zechariah 12:10 it talks about how God is going to pour upon Israel in the end a spirit of grace and a spirit of supplication, where they will call out to God. And it says about that they will look upon him whom they have pierced, and they will mourn for me. And at that time it goes on to say how a fountain of forgiveness and cleansing will be opened in the midst of Jerusalem for the Jewish people. And of course, you know, what this is saying is if you're really a sincere Christian, you got to love the Jewish people, because you recognize that we will all be brothers someday. Maybe right now we're divided by a lot of different issues, but if a person really loves Christ, they're going to love his people, and his people are the Jewish people. He came as a Jew, and so a Christian has to recognize that. All the apostles were Jewish. And so what I'm saying is that there are many reasons why I believe in the Christian faith. There are many prophecies I can point to that Jesus fulfilled. There are many, many miracles that he performed that are attested to not only in the New Testament, but extra-biblical sources also. There are all the wisdom I talked about. And another, I think, very, very fruitful area for us to explore is the consistency between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Because you're not going to like me for this if I say it, so brace yourself, put on your proverbial seatbelts. But I would argue, if we ever continue this again, that the New Testament is more consistent with the Tanakh than the rabbinic understanding, or as Yosef says, the Talmud. I think the Talmud has gone far astray, and I think the New Testament is much more faithful to the Old Testament revelation. So what I'm saying, I'm going to get back to your question. What I'm saying is, Yosef says, what if this one word was a problem? And I have to weigh that one word, that one problem, and it is a problem for me.
I think I gave you more than 30 different problems, not one word. I mean, I asked you about one word, but I asked you about 25 mistakes in the descendants.
But I think I answered that, didn't I?
No, you said
I said they're two separate genealogies.
How can it be for one person two separate genealogies?
People have a mother and they have a father, don't they?
No, but I already answered that. I told you descendants based on the Torah, which you agree is the word of God, does not go by the mother. Well, it may suit your purpose, but it's not proper.
But this situation is unusual because here you have a genealogy from a father who is not the biological father. So to cover all bases, perhaps that is the rationale. And I don't know the rationale because the New Testament doesn't give the rationale for giving two genealogies. But perhaps that is the rationale, to cover all bases. That biologically, he's a child of David, he's a descendant of David, and also through adoption, he's the son of David.
Well, adoption, you know that if I'm a Kohen, which means a high priest in the holy temple, and I adopt a son, and that's my only son, he cannot be a Kohen. And based on your argument, he is entitled to be a Kohen. But the Torah says clearly, an adopted boy, it's not your original biological son. Yes, the Torah says, lemishpachotam. Every time the Torah says lezera, zera means seed. It means from the seed, not from buying him in some kind of agency. Even though you love him very much. I want to ask you a question. I mean, I'm not really insulting. It's just something that just came to my mind. and this is a question that you may have to ask yourself based on what you're trying to answer. I'm just giving you an example. If I adopt a dog, is this dog will be my original son? I'm just curious. You know, people giving inheritance to dogs, and they give them $10 million. You hear this on the news all the time. Based on your argument, he's going to say that this dog is his son. He has to be a Kohen. He has to be whatever he is. If he's the mayor of New York, so this dog should inherit.
I would agree with you. No.
No. Thank you very much. Now, if the Torah comes and say lezera, zera means seed. Okay, you don't believe me? Open the dictionary and check. And seed means he's a biological son. And it's obvious, and there's many sources.
Not always. Not always. Sometimes zera is used in a figurative sense.
Can you prove?
Yes.
Please. Can I ask you a question? Maybe you help me with that, because I'm not such an expert with the New Testament sources. What does it mean?
Acts. That's the book of Acts. That's New Testament. That is the book that follows the Gospel of John.
Here is your sources for the cave. Jacob, please read it loud. Here is the source. You can check it.
Jacob and our fathers went down to Egypt and died there and were carried to Shechem.
Shechem, it's Nablus.
Right.
Check. Double check me. Everybody knows where Shechem is? What is Shechem? Nablus or Hebron? Nablus. Okay, Shechem.
Okay, and buried in the grave which Abraham had purchased from the sons of Cpor in Shechem.
That's another mistake. I highlight the mistakes. First, Abraham never purchased it from the son of Cpor Shechem. Read in the Old Testament, he got it from Ephron. So that's a very serious contradiction from Where is the New Testament? Please bring it back. Baruch Hashem, we found the source. So we have the source. Huh? Well, I found it. I have it. I showed them. I told you it's going to take minutes. You didn't believe me.
That's good. You have an advantage there.
Nah, it's a home court advantage. Look at the crowd.
You got everything.
The next thing they're going to have flags here, you know. But actually, I'm willing to. I'm actually, by the way, to make it 100% fair, I'm willing to come to your home court and argue the same things with you in front of the Christian crowd.
I don't have a home court.
Well, we will make you one. So, I'll give you the sources. By the way...
I'll have to look.
Okay, I'll give you another thing, if we already meant... Yes, please, copy everything. By the way, you see that I have a full of list of contradictions, which we didn't even discuss this. But we'll leave it for another time. Because really time is running out. I want to conclude this in the next few minutes, with your permission.
Please.
I want to tell you... in the year 160, which is about almost 1840 years ago, there was a priest, one of the head of the Christian church. His name was Titanus. I hope in English it sounds the same. I don't know how to say it in English, but you know which one I'm referring to? Titanus. Please write it down. I mean, it's a foreign word. I mean, it was copying from English. So Titanus. And he wrote in his book that there is a serious problem with the contradictions between the four parts of the New Testament: John, Mark, Matthew, and Luke. And because of that, he offered the Christian church to modify and make a book and compromise. Since we have so many different problems, we cannot answer our crowd, how is it possible there's so many mistakes in almost every chapter? Why don't we make a new version of the New Testament, and we will address all the problems and all the contradictions. Now I want to ask you, please, based on what we spoke here in the last 2-3 hours, in the serious warning of the Old Testament, which they agree it's the Word of God, what is the punishment of a person that erased one letter from a divine book? No, loud. That punishment. How is the head of the Christian church, because he's dealing with so many human error, offering to take the New Testament and modify it completely and match between
I've never
the
heard
contradiction.
about
You don't have to believe me.
Nobody,
That's why.
Christian would not.
Okay. Wait.
I'm not denying that there's somebody hereditary.
Okay. Oh, wait.
Christian. You got all sorts of people.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that we would ever justify.
That's why I'm giving you the name. All you have to do, remember, it was a year 160 to the Christian counting.
But
and I give you his name.
Personally, I don't care about that. I don't care that there were certain heretics
one of the most important
the Christian
Christians
church, who advocated this thing or that thing.
Why you don't? It should bother you very much. That shows that the Christians are not loyal to the divine text. They do whatever they want with that, based on their needs.
But you see, there are Jews who convert to Christianity too. Does that invalidate Judaism?
I want to ask you a question. Is that a proof of something? I will tell you that today there is inflation with ignorant Jews, unfortunately, that never learned Judaism because of the exile condition, because of money problems, money issues. It's very expensive to get Jewish education. Someone like you, which is educated and intelligent and have some knowledge, can take any ignorant Jew from the street and in 20 minutes make him believe anything you want, I promise you. I have news for you. In many flights that I took to places in the world, sometimes in the airport, not always, but sometimes I met priests. And he saw me with the yarmulke, and they come and they initiate conversation, and I promise you, and that's not a lie, everyone who sat with me, the maximum he sat next to me was 15 minutes. After 15 minutes he ran away that I will not see him by mistake. Why? When I started to shoot the list of the questions that I had, as a matter of fact, I'll tell you a story that just happened. About eight years ago, it was the Sabbath, and unfortunately it was the Sabbath because at that time I used to film all the seminars that we're making. We had a seminar in New Jersey with a very important Jew from Mexico. His name is Dr. Betesh. And Dr. Betesh said, while giving an example, a comparison between Judaism to other religions, he said, everyone who wants to bring a priest or any Christian educated person to argue, I'm open to suggestion at any time. Any time, any place. Guess what? There was a little Persian 7-year-old kid at that seminar, 7 years old. He thought it's going to be a nice challenge. He walked in a hotel and he found a priest, a pastor from New Jersey. I looked at his card, he had about 7 or 8 different titles. And I understood he had a large crowd, they had also a seminar there. So he invited him to the argument. And this is an important pastor. He later himself said that he was a pilot in Vietnam. He told his life story. And based on that conversation that we had over there, I wish I could film it, but I couldn't do it because it was the Sabbath. He asked him about 4 or 5 issues, not 30, 50 that we dealt with tonight. Well, the whole conversation was maybe 40 minutes. And then this was the reaction of the priest. May God be my witness. He hold his head like this, and he say, "Oh my gosh, my mother will kill me when she find out I converted to Judaism." That was his answer. Yes, I'm serious. Wait. Let me finish the story. Wait. You're giving me...
They're ignorant Christians. I agree. You've already admitted
I gave you a pastor.
Jews.
A pastor.
So
a pastor, not an ignorant Christian.
You're an ignorant pastor.
Okay, all right, you answer my question. All right, okay.
If you think I'm about to convert, you're mistaken.
You still did not answer the last question that I asked you. You
never gave me a chance.
I did. You answered, but not to the point. You told me that if a person will come with a book, before I told you about the cave of Jacob, before I found you the source, I asked you, if a person will show you that the Twin Towers collapsed in Brooklyn, is that an indication that this book can be given by God? You hesitated, but in the end you say, well, that will be the end of this book for me. Now, when I show you the source, you contradicted yourself completely.
Well, let me explain.
Let me explain.
Do you think I can dig myself out of this hole now? I don't know, you got me pretty deep there. The distinction that I wish to make is if there is no way to reconcile this mistake with what I believe the origin of the New Testament to be, then I've got a problem. But as with this case of Shechem, I do believe that there is a way to reconcile. I might not know right now, but I do believe there's an explanation. And also, what I try to explain is that there are so many compelling reasons to believe that the New Testament is God-breathed, along with the Old Testament. There's so many that I am mandated by logic and reason itself to believe that there must be some way to reconcile these disparate elements. I don't think that's a contradiction.
Tell me, please.
I have to study that first.
Okay.
I don't know how to answer it.
We said it in the beginning.
But again, just think of your wife. If your wife has been faithful to you for 50 years, and somebody brings you a report and says that in some way she was unfaithful, are you going to believe that report in light of 50 years of proven faithfulness? It's the same way with me in the New Testament, and the same way a Christian. If it has proved itself to me in so many different ways, if the writers have proved themselves, you ask the question, who would believe? It's easy for people to believe the New Testament because
proof, but that's not the proper word to use.
Let me talk.
To you anything.
Well, please, give me a chance. Give me a chance. What you said was there was every reason in the world for people to believe in Christianity. It's so easy. It took away the law. Why wouldn't people believe in it? But just think of the difficult things that people had to risk their lives in order to believe in the New Testament, because it was the death penalty, as you point out, to believe against people's understanding of the Old Testament. And besides that, how could anybody believe in the leader of the faith, Jesus Christ, dying on the cross, and there being any validity in that religion unless there were actual miracles that took place? Who would want to believe in somebody who was stripped naked and tortured to death? Who would want to believe in that unless there were compelling reasons? So I would assert there are many, many compelling.
The reasons and proofs are complete two different things. There are many, many reasons why so many people in the world doing foolish things. The fact that 60% of the youth smoke drugs or use LSD or cocaine doesn't mean that my children and your children also have to follow it, because we both agree that it's not the proper life. So using a majority, what the people does, or so many reasons why people follow one person, I have news for you. I have a list of more than 50 false messiah here. Do you want me to start and tell you the life story of each one of them? It may change you from one to the other, because they all claim what you just said. I have a list of the last 2,000 years. There's books full of false messiah, even among Judaism. That one of them, everybody was sure that he's the Messiah, and it turned that he died. And once he died, the rabbi said that was a false belief. It's impossible. You should know one thing, and I'm sure you do know, but for the crowd. The Bible says that Elijah will come 3 days before the Messiah will appear, and he will tell the entire nation to prepare for the arrival of the Messiah. And the Messiah will save the Jews from all their agony and pain. Those conditions never happened in the life of Jesus. The Jews suffer since Jesus from the Christian church more than any other nations. Tens of millions of Jews were tortured and were forced in the time of the Inquisitions, forcing them, tear them away from their land, from their family, putting taxes on them, burning them with the Torah for the last 1,000 years in the name of the New Testament, even though the New Testament promised that is the religion of love. What kind of religions of love that claim that they have the truth will bring people and police and in the basements of churches all over history, as you know, in Spain and in Portugal and in many other countries, and burn the Jews and tear their body to two halves in a wheel because they refused to accept the New Testament? I never did, even though I'm a little strict. I have a reputation that when I come and argue with a non-religious Jew and try to make him religious, not everyone can use this direct approach. No problem, I respect his opinion. But I never use a will to rip him to two because he doesn't want to become a Shomer Shabbos. It never occurred to me. If I have the truth, I'm going to use common sense and proof. If I don't have what to offer, I'm going to hire a gangster to do the job. And that's what Muhammad did. What do you think? When he came up with the Quran, right away they started to murder people. Judaism is not a missionary religion. If any, we are opposed collecting Gentiles from the world and come adopt them into Judaism. The opposite, that's not our goal. It wasn't my intention with you and your friend here. The opposite. If you would consider it, it's your choice. Everyone has a free choice.
May I respond?
Please.
If a Christian really knows their religion, and the simplest thing to recognize is that Jesus came as a Jew. All his apostles, all his followers were Jews. Everyone who wrote the New Testament, with perhaps the exception of Luke, were Jewish. Anybody who realizes these facts, anybody who realizes what Paul says about the Jewish people, that the gifts and the calling of God cannot be revoked, anybody who really believes would never treat Jews like that. What does that mean? Well, I have to say, wait a second. Sadly, many aspects, in the name of Christ, many horrible things have been done. But please remember that Christianity, true Christianity, was hijacked for a long time. You know, within the Catholic Church, it was forbidden to translate the New Testament or the Bible itself into the vernacular, into the common language of the people. People were put to death. Christians were put to death for translating the New Testament. In other words, darkness had come over the entire Christian church establishment for long periods of time. But Christians who know their religion have to love the Jews. And so I have to apologize for those people in the name of Jesus who did what they did to the Jewish people. There is no reason for that.
Okay, thank you for that. And I would like to conclude. And first of all, I thank everyone that showed up and behaved in a nice way with patience. I want to remind everyone that the reason for this debate was all intelligence. He is trying to prove their side, we're trying to prove our side. We have questions about what they claim. In my opinion, I would like to conclude my side, and then Danny will conclude his side. In my opinion, and you have the right to judge according to what you just saw, in my opinion, I presented a lot of questions, and we are still have time for him to come back with 15 or 20 questions that are not solved, some of the contradictions and mistakes. If he will be able to answer them, then it will be maybe a point to re-meet again and hear the answers. But if he's not, for whatever reason, that pastor that I told you from 8 years ago, he said to Dr. Betesh, give me 3 days. You're still going to be in New York? He said, yes. In 3 days I'll get back to you. Until today, we're waiting for him. Dr. Betesh sent him or somebody that affiliate with him, send a letter to the Pope, the ex-Pope, about the question that I asked about King David descendants. If Joseph is not the father, why did you waste a whole page to describe his descendants? We sent it to the Pope. He sent it to the Pope, and the Pope send him an email back from the Vatican. The answer to your question will be given by the father of the Church of Nativity in Bethlehem. He will answer your question. Right away, it's a question. Why the head Christian in the world don't know to answer this question? So when he sent to the father, Joseph something, I don't remember his full name, in a Church of Nativity, the answer is, dear Jewish brother, the answer to your question is in the book, The Birth of the Messiah. I'm sure you're familiar with that book, yeah? No? So if he gave us a book, a name of a book, Dr. Betesh asked 5 experts to read the book and look in the entire book for the answer to this question, and there was obviously no answer, so he sent them back another email, and the father apologized, and he said, I'm sorry, I gave you the wrong source. The name is another book. and 5 other people read the new book that he gave, and the answer was not given. He thought maybe they'll leave him alone. They contact him for the 3rd time, and until today, until today, we never got back an answer from the Vatican, from the Christian Church. In my opinion, we will never get an answer to this question, because the people who wrote the New Testament made such a critical mistake, there is no way to correct it. Because if it's divine, there cannot be such a human error in it. If you try to prove that she did not cheated on her fiancé and her husband, and she did not become pregnant by another person, which we have her name, the real father of Jesus, I didn't want to bring it up. I didn't want to make this conversation ugly, that's why I kept it outside. If you want, I'll give you the source, what's his real father's name. But in that case, we asked many experts in the Christian world, and the answer were never given. And